He thought I was just an inconvenience he could dismiss with $40 and a condescending smile. He had no idea he'd just spilled scalding coffee on the woman about to decide the fate of his $100 million company. The scent of over-roasted coffee beans and panicked ambition always hung heavy in the air of the daily grind, the preferred caffeine dispensary for the wolves of the financial district. I was there for my usual pre-game ritual, a large black Americano and 5 minutes of silent meditation before the biggest pitch of my career. I was about to walk into a boardroom and single-handedly decide whether a tech company called Aura Sync would get the $100 million Series B funding they were desperate for. My analysis, my recommendation, was the final word. My suit was custom-tailored, a deep charcoal gray that screamed competence. My presentation was memorized down to the last decimal point, and my confidence was a shield. That shield, however, wasn't prepared for Mr. Theodore Sterling. You know the type. A man in his late 50s who mistakes his inherited wealth for personal genius. He stormed into the coffee shop, already barking into his phone, his voice a foghorn of entitlement. "I don't care about the optics, Gerald. These diversity quotas are a joke. Find me the best person for the job, not the box ticker." He gestured impatiently at the barista, effectively cutting in front of 3 of us who had been waiting patiently. The young woman behind the counter, clearly intimidated, started taking his obnoxious order for a bone-dry, extra-hot 6-shot cappuccino. I took a subtle step back, not wanting any part of his toxic orbit. But his voice carried. "They're pushing this new analyst on me for the final pitch. Some woman, Lattimore, probably fresh out of school, thinks she knows everything because she aced a spreadsheet exam." He chuckled, a wet, unpleasant sound. "We'll see how she handles a real shark." My blood ran cold. He was talking about me, Maya Lattimore, 34 years old, with a decade of experience and a reputation for being able to spot a failing business model from a mile away. Fresh out of school. The casual, dismissive prejudice of it was a familiar sting. I kept my face a mask of calm, focusing on the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine. My turn was next. I just needed my coffee. I just needed to get to that meeting. As the barista called my name, I stepped forward to grab my cup. At that exact moment, Sterling ended his call with a loud, "Get it done," and spun around, not looking where he was going. His entire body slammed into mine. The world seemed to slow down as the flimsy paper cup in his hand buckled, launching a wave of scalding milky liquid directly onto my chest. The heat was instantaneous and searing. A strangled gasp escaped my lips as the 6 shots of extra-hot cappuccino soaked through my silk blouse and the jacket of my brand-new suit. It felt like fire against my skin. The entire cafe fell silent. Everyone stared. Sterling looked down at the mess, his expression one of pure annoyance, not concern. "For God's sake," he grumbled, looking at the coffee dripping from my blazer onto the floor. "You should really watch where you're going." I was speechless. The pain was sharp, but the audacity of his words was sharper. I looked from the massive spreading brown stain on my chest to his perfectly unruffled, sneering face. This man had just assaulted me with hot coffee, ruined a $1,000 suit, and was blaming me. And that, right there, was his second mistake. His first was underestimating me. His second was what he did next. He reached into his wallet, pulled out 2 crumpled $20 bills, and tried to shove them into my hand. "Here," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, loud enough for the whole shop to hear. "This should cover the dry cleaning, sweetheart." My hand, which had been clutching my throbbing chest, slowly lowered to my side. I didn't take the money. I just stared at him. The buzzing in my ears from the shock and pain began to fade, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. In that moment, looking at his dismissive face, I saw every boss who ever talked down to me, every colleague who stole my ideas, Every man who assumed my gender and my race made me less capable. They were all distilled into this one arrogant man. I took a deep, steadying breath, ignoring the stares of the other patrons. I turned without a word, walked into the restroom, and did my best to blot the stain and assess the burn on my skin. It was red and angry, just like me. I had 20 minutes until the meeting, not enough time to go home and change. I would have to walk into the most important meeting of my life looking like a mess, smelling of burnt coffee, with a throbbing second-degree burn on my chest. When I walked into the Aura Sync boardroom 10 minutes later, all eyes went to the giant, ugly stain on my jacket. I saw the pity, the confusion, the flicker of disapproval on the faces of the board members. I ignored them, took my seat at the head of the table, and opened my laptop. The CEO of the investment firm I worked for, Mr. Davenport, gave me a concerned look. "Maya, are you all right?" "Never better," I said, my voice even. "Let's begin." Just as he was about to start the introductions, the boardroom door swung open. In walked Theodore Sterling, a triumphant smirk on his face, ready to pitch the deal of a lifetime. He strode towards the head of the table, his hand outstretched to greet Mr. Davenport. Then his eyes landed on me. He looked at my coffee-stained blazer, then at my face, and the blood drained from his. He had no idea who I was, but he was about to find out. My name is Maya Lattimore, and I was the lead analyst deciding the fate of his entire company's $100 million funding round. The smirk on Theodore Sterling's face didn't just fade. It curdled. It was like watching a statue crack in real time. His eyes, which had been full of smug self-importance, widened in dawning horror. They flicked from my face to the dark, ugly coffee stain on my blazer and back again. He saw me. He truly saw me for the first time, not as some anonymous obstacle in a coffee shop, but as Maya Lattimore, the analyst, the box ticker, who held the fate of his $100 million dream in her hands. The blood drained so completely from his face, he looked like a ghost in a Zegna suit. I gave him nothing. Not a flicker of recognition, not a hint of malice. I held his gaze with a look of pure, glacial indifference. I was a professional, and he was a line item on my agenda. Mr. Davenport, my boss, cleared his throat, sensing the sudden, inexplicable tension in the room. "Theodore," he said, gesturing between us, "this is Maya Lattimore, our lead analyst on this project. Maya, this is Theodore Sterling, CEO of Aura Sync." I extended my hand across the polished mahogany table without standing up. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice as crisp and cool as a starched collar. "A pleasure." His hand was clammy, his grip weak. He looked like a man who had just seen the final exam after studying for the wrong class. He opened his mouth, then closed it, a fish gasping for air. He knew. He knew that any apology now would be an admission of guilt in front of his potential investors. He knew that to say nothing was to let this poison hang in the air between us. He was trapped, and I had built the cage. "Right," he mumbled, pulling his hand back as if my skin had burned him. He stumbled to his position at the front of the room, fumbling with his laptop and projector remote. The swagger he'd had in the coffee shop was gone, replaced by the frantic energy of a cornered animal. He began his pitch, or rather he tried to. The confident shark from his phone call was nowhere to be seen. He stammered, lost his place in his own slides, and mixed up key financial figures. His voice, once a foghorn of entitlement, was now thin and reedy. He kept darting panicked glances at me, searching my face for some sign, any sign, of what I was planning. I gave him only a serene, unreadable mask, my pen occasionally scratching a note on my legal pad. Every other person in that room was watching his presentation. He was performing only for me. After 20 agonizing minutes he finally finished, sweating through his expensive shirt. "And so," he concluded weakly, Orasync is poised for exponential growth. A polite, strained silence filled the room. Mr. Davenport turned to me. Maya, your thoughts? This was it. Showtime. I let the silence stretch for another beat, enjoying the way Sterling's jaw tightened. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, I began, my voice calm and measured. An ambitious presentation. I have a few questions, if you don't mind. I didn't wait for an answer. I started with the basics, surgically dissecting his revenue projections, his user acquisition costs, his market penetration strategy. My questions were knives, each one sharpened by hours of research and a fresh, burning rage. With every answer he gave, I had a follow-up that exposed a new weakness, a fresh inconsistency. The rest of the board started to look uneasy, their polite smiles replaced with frowns of concern. They were no longer seeing an ambitious tech mogul. They were seeing a man completely out of his depth, being dismantled by an analyst half his age. Then I pivoted. I'd like to discuss company culture, Mr. Sterling. An investment of this size isn't just in a product, it's in a leadership team. Your employee turnover in senior management is nearly double the industry average. Can you speak to the optics of that? How do you ensure you're hiring the best person for the job, and not just someone who fits a preconceived mold? I used his own words, lobbing them back at him like grenades. He flinched as if struck. We have a robust HR department, he stammered. We value all our employees. Do you? I asked, leaning forward slightly. Because a company's greatest asset and its greatest liability is its leadership. Stability, foresight, and sound judgment under pressure are paramount. An investor needs to know that the CEO can handle unexpected challenges with grace and professionalism, that they don't have a blind spot when it comes to assessing risk, whether it's in the market or in a crowded room. His face was now a ghastly shade of white. He knew exactly what I was talking about. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the desperate calculation. Mr. Davenport was looking at me, a question in his eyes. He knew this was more than just an analysis. This was an execution. I looked down at my notes, then back up at Sterling, my eyes devoid of any warmth. Your entire business model is predicated on a predictive algorithm that identifies and mitigates risk for your clients. Yet, in reviewing your own internal operations, I found a staggering oversight in your own risk management protocols. A flaw so fundamental it suggests a pattern of behavior, a tendency to dismiss crucial details, to act impulsively, and to blame others when things go wrong. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the silent boardroom. Then I looked him dead in the eye. In fact, Mr. Sterling, I have a very specific, very recent example of this exact behavioral flaw. An example that makes me question not just your leadership, but your basic character and judgment. The silence in the boardroom was no longer just tense. It was thick and suffocating. Every eye was on me, then on the crumbling facade of Theodore Sterling. Mr. Davenport leaned forward, his expression a mixture of intense curiosity and dawning comprehension. Maya, he said, his voice low and serious. Please elaborate. I kept my gaze locked on Sterling. This morning, less than an hour ago, I was the victim of a minor assault, I began, my voice steady and clear. The word assault hung in the air like a charged particle. A man, distracted and acting with a sense of entitlement, slammed into me, spilling scalding hot coffee all over my chest. I gestured pointedly to the prominent, ugly brown stain that everyone had been trying so hard to ignore. He burned me, ruined my suit, and instead of offering a sincere apology or showing any concern, he blamed me for the incident. Then, in a final act of public humiliation, he tried to shove $40 into my hand and called me sweetheart. A collective gasp, soft but audible, went around the table. The board members looked from my stained blazer to Sterling's ashen face. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. They weren't just hearing a story, they were seeing the evidence firsthand. This man, I continued, my voice gaining strength, demonstrated a complete lack of situational awareness, an immediate impulse to shift blame, and an arrogant belief that a dismissive, insulting gesture could fix a problem of his own making. He misjudged the person in front of him, misjudged the situation, and misjudged the potential consequences of his actions. He saw a black woman and made an assumption. He didn't see a person, he saw a problem he could buy off for $40. I turned my attention to the rest of the board. My analysis of Orasink's financials reveals a similar pattern. The numbers are dressed up, but the foundation is weak. They've overestimated market share, underestimated competitor response, and their entire growth strategy relies on a single, high-risk partnership that is far from secured. It's reckless. It's impulsive. It's the business equivalent of plowing through a crowded room without looking, assuming everyone else will just get out of your way. I closed my folder with a quiet, definitive snap. My official recommendation is a hard pass. We do not invest. The leadership exhibits a fundamental flaw in risk assessment and character that permeates the entire corporate structure. This is not a $100 million opportunity. It's a $100 million liability waiting to happen. And Mr. Sterling himself is the single biggest risk factor of them all. Theodore Sterling finally broke. "This is ridiculous. It's a personal vendetta," he sputtered, his face now a blotchy red. "She's making this about a spilled coffee. This is unprofessional." Mr. Davenport stood up, his face a mask of cold fury. "Theodore," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "what's unprofessional is assaulting my lead analyst, regardless of who she is. What's unprofessional is the breathtaking arrogance you displayed, first with her, and now in this room. Maya's analysis has always been impeccable, but today you gave her an invaluable piece of qualitative data she couldn't have found in any financial statement. You gave her a live demonstration of your character. You proved her entire thesis right here in this room." He gestured to the door. "This meeting is over. Security will see you out." Sterling stood there for a moment, utterly defeated, his empire crumbling around him because of a cappuccino and a complete failure to see the person he was knocking over. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He turned and walked out of the room, not as a titan of industry, but as a small, pathetic man. As soon as the door closed, the room erupted. The board members were all talking at once, shocked and appalled. Mr. Davenport walked over to me, his expression softening. "Maya, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Are you all right? You should go see a doctor about that burn." "I will," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "Thank you, sir." "No, thank you," he replied, putting a hand on my shoulder. "You just saved us $100 million, and you did it with more grace and integrity under fire than I've ever seen." That afternoon, the news of Orasink's failed funding round hit the financial newswire. The story spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into articles. Insiders, emboldened by the news of his failure, started talking. Stories of Sterling's temper, his dismissive attitude, and his questionable business practices began to leak. His existing investors got spooked. His high-risk partnership collapsed. Within a week, his company was in a death spiral. His arrogance hadn't just cost him a deal, it had cost him everything. I bought a new suit, a powerful shade of cobalt blue. The burn on my chest eventually faded into a small scar, a permanent reminder of the day my personal and professional lives collided. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest deals aren't about numbers on a spreadsheet. They're about character, respect, and seeing the person right in front of you. Theodore Sterling built an empire on the assumption that he could just bulldoze his way through the world. But he learned the hard way that sometimes the person you knock over is the one holding the detonator.